My name is Ethan Cole, and I'm 32 years old. This is the story I've never told anyone. I call it. She touched my face and said, "You're warmer than the sun today." I used to believe life had a rhythm, one that you could count on. Wake up, shower, coffee, drive to work, pretend to care about emails, go home, repeat. But that illusion shattered the morning she walked into the office. Her name was Claire. She wasn't supposed to stay. She was a consultant, brought in by the higher-ups to restructure our department, which everyone understood was code for slash and burn. Most people in the office hated her before she even arrived. I was supposed to hate her too, but hate is a sharp, lazy word. And nothing about Claire felt lazy. The first time I saw her, she was standing by the window of the conference room, rain smearing the glass behind her like watercolor paint. She was wearing this dark green coat. Not the kind you see in stores, but the kind that looks like it has a story stitched into the seams. She had this way of holding her coffee mug like it might slip from her fingers if she thought too hard about anything else. I don't remember what anyone else was saying in that meeting. I just remember her eyes. They weren't striking in the cinematic sense. Not those piercing blues or impossible greens you read about in books. They were brown, simple, warm. But when she looked at you, she didn't blink as often as most people do. She'd hold your gaze, like she was waiting for the real answer to a question you hadn't heard her ask. I was staring. I knew I was staring. And then, during a lull in the meeting, she caught me. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said softly, just for me. I laughed too quickly. Not a ghost. I stopped. Just what, Ethan? Just a woman who feels like she's about to change everything? Over the next few weeks, Claire moved through our office like she was rearranging furniture in a house that didn't belong to her. Careful, polite, but unapologetic. She fired 3 people in the first month. People whispered that she didn't care, that she was cold. But she wasn't. I saw it the first Friday she stayed late. Everyone else had gone home, but I was stuck finishing a report. The office was dark except for the pool of light spilling from her desk lamp. She didn't notice me at first. She was sitting there with a termination letter in front of her, head in her hands. "Rough day?" I asked from the doorway. She jumped, then laughed, hand over her chest. "God, Ethan, you scared me." I held up my hands. "Sorry. Didn't mean to." She studied me for a moment, like she was debating whether to tell me something. Then she folded the letter and slid it into her bag. "Do you ever feel like you're just the bad guy in someone else's story?" The way she said it, half to herself, made me ache. "You're not the bad guy," I said, before I even thought about it. She looked up. "How do you know?" I hesitated. "Because bad guys don't ask that question." She smiled, faintly, and that's when it happened. She crossed the room, stopped right in front of me, and reached up to touch my face. It wasn't dramatic, just the back of her fingers against my cheek, like she was testing if I was real. "You're warmer than the sun today," she said, almost under her breath. It was the strangest, most disarming thing anyone had ever said to me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. The problem, and there's always a problem, isn't there, was that I wasn't single. I'd been with Julia for 4 years. We lived together. We'd built a life that looked perfect from the outside. Matching furniture, shared grocery lists, 2 sets of keys on the same hook by the door. But Julia and I had been quietly drifting for months. Conversations became logistics. Kisses became habits. And sometimes, lying awake at night, I wondered if she noticed how long it had been since we'd really seen each other. Claire wasn't the reason for the drift, but she was the first person to make me admit it to myself. The more Claire and I talked, the more dangerous it felt. We started with work things, projects, reports, office gossip. Then it turned into late-night conversations about books we loved, songs we'd forgotten about, the kind of lives we thought we'd be living by now. One night, she told me about her father. "He left when I was 12, she said, tracing the rim of her glass with her fingertip. "Didn't say goodbye, didn't explain, just gone." She didn't cry. Her voice didn't even crack. But I felt the weight of it. And I told her things too. Things I hadn't said out loud to anyone. Not even Julia. That's how it happens. Not all at once, but in increments so small you don't notice how far you've gone until you look back and the shore is gone. The night everything started to unravel wasn't dramatic. No storm, no slammed doors, just Claire and me, sitting in my car after a work dinner, neither of us moving to get out. She turned to me and said, "You're unhappy." It wasn't a question. I opened my mouth to deny it, but nothing came out. She reached for my hand, hesitated, then pulled back. "I don't want to be the reason you burn your life down," she whispered. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Julia breathe beside me, wondering when the silence between us had become its own language. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire sitting in my car, her hand hovering between us like a bridge we were both too scared to cross. The next morning, Julia noticed something. "You're quiet," she said over coffee. "I'm just tired," I lied, but she didn't buy it. Julia's always been able to read me better than I'd like. She set her cup down and asked, "Is there something you're not telling me?" I almost told her everything right then. About Claire, about the feeling that my life was shifting under my feet, but the words stuck in my throat like glass. At work, things only grew more complicated. Claire and I didn't talk about what had happened in the car, but it hovered between us, unspoken, like a shadow you can't step out of. She was careful, professional, but I caught her looking at me in meetings when she thought no one would notice. And I looked back. It was inevitable that people started whispering. Offices have a way of sniffing out what you don't say. One afternoon, my coworker Mason leaned over and smirked. "So, what's the deal with you and the consultant?" "Nothing," I said too quickly. He raised an eyebrow. "Sure, nothing." And just like that, the walls started closing in. The breaking point came the night Julia found my phone. I'd been careless, or maybe I'd wanted to be caught. There were no love confessions, no explicit words, just messages that felt different. "Claire, did you ever find that song you told me about? The one your mom used to play?" "Me, yeah. I've been listening to it on repeat." "Claire, you always listen to songs like they mean something." Julia read them all. When I walked in from work, she was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, her face pale and still. "Who is Claire?" she asked. The air left the room. She's someone from work," I said. Her voice cracked. "Are you in love with her?" I should have said no. I should have told her she was imagining things, that nothing was happening. But I couldn't, because in that moment, Julia and I both knew the truth. That night was the ugliest one of my life. Julia screamed. I stayed silent. She cried. I tried to explain something I didn't fully understand myself. And then she asked the question that broke me. Why wasn't I enough? I didn't have an answer. By the next morning, her side of the closet was half empty. After Julia left, I thought things with Claire would be simple, that we'd just fall into each other like it had been waiting to happen all along. But reality is never that clean. When I told Claire about Julia, she didn't smile. She didn't kiss me. She just sat very still, her hands folded in her lap. "Ethan," she whispered, "I never wanted this." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Her eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. "I didn't want to be the reason someone's heart broke. And I didn't want you to ruin your life for me." "I didn't ruin my life," I said, maybe louder than I meant to. "Julia and I were already falling apart. You just..." I stopped. "What? You just what? Claire? Saved me? Broke me? Both?" We didn't touch for days after that conversation. We kept working together, but every word felt brittle, like glass ready to shatter. Then one evening, she showed up at my apartment. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask if she could come in. She just walked over, put her hand on my face like she had that first night, and said it again. "You're warmer than the sun today." This time, she kissed me. And for one perfect, fleeting moment, I believed it would all be worth it. But love born in wreckage has sharp edges. A week later, I got a call from my sister. "Ethan," she said, voice tight, "Julia called me." I closed my eyes. What did she say? She said you're destroying everything, that you're not the person you used to be. I wanted to argue, but deep down I wondered if she was right, because the truth is, I didn't recognize myself anymore. The morning the truth began to surface was a Thursday. I remember because I spilled coffee on my shirt driving to work. A stupid little accident that somehow felt like a sign that the day was going to tilt. Claire wasn't at her desk when I arrived. That was unusual. She was always there early, the type who sat with her laptop open and her hair pinned back like she could will the entire office into order. But that day, her chair was empty. When she finally came in, an hour late, her face was pale, her hands trembling as she dropped her bag on the desk. Pulled her aside. "Claire, what's going on?" She glanced around, her voice low. "Not here." That evening, we sat in her apartment, the first time I'd been there. It wasn't what I expected. No framed photos, no cozy clutter. Just bare walls and a sofa that looked like it belonged to a rental service. She sat across from me, twisting her hands together like she was braiding invisible rope. "There's something you don't know," she said. My chest tightened. "About what?" She didn't look at me when she answered. "About why I took this job. About why I came here." What she told me next cracked the ground beneath us. Her father, the one she'd said left when she was 12, hadn't just left. "He's the CEO of the parent company," she said. "The one restructuring everything." I just stared at her. "Wait, what are you talking about?" Her voice was a whisper now. "This wasn't just another assignment for me, Ethan. My father sent me here. He said it was time I learned how to do the hard things." I felt the room tilt. "Claire, all those people you fired." She flinched. "I was following orders, trying to prove I could be like him." The words were sharp, cutting through the warmth I'd been clinging to. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, her eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. "Because you're the only one who sees me as something other than his daughter. And I didn't want to lose that." The room went silent. I thought about Julia, about the nights I'd lied by omission, telling myself I wasn't really lying. And now here was Claire, looking at me with that same kind of fragile guilt. I didn't know whether to hold her or walk away. In the end, I did neither. I just sat there and said, "So what happens now?" Claire looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face. "I'm leaving," she whispered. "My father's pulling me off the project. He thinks I've gotten distracted." The word distracted stung more than I expected. "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow." We didn't talk much after that. She came to my apartment that night. We didn't eat. We barely spoke. We just held each other like we were trying to press the shape of this brief, complicated thing into memory. Before she left in the morning, she touched my face again, just like she did the first time, and she said it one last time. "You're warmer than the sun today." And then she was gone. No dramatic goodbye, no promise of later, just gone. In the weeks that followed, I tried to piece my life back together. Julia didn't come back. Claire didn't call. I went to work. I answered emails. I nodded through meetings. But everything felt muted, like someone had turned the volume down on the world. It's been a year now. Sometimes I wonder if Claire thinks about me when she touches her face absent-mindedly. If she hears her own voice in her head saying those words. Sometimes I wonder if Julia has forgiven me, or if she ever should. But mostly, I think about what Claire told me the night before she left. We were lying there in the dark, and she whispered, "Do you ever wish you could go back and choose differently?" I thought about it for a long time, and then I said, "No. I just wish I'd been braver sooner." If there's one thing this whole tangled, aching story taught me, it's this. Life doesn't wait for you to decide. You can cling to the safety of what you know, or you can step into the unknown, and either way, something will break. But maybe that's not always a tragedy. Maybe sometimes the breaking is the only way the light gets in.